Chosen one, are you tired of feeling like you're running out of time? Are you exhausted from waiting for God's promises while watching others seem to move ahead? Do you sometimes wonder if you've missed your moment? If the door to your destiny has already closed? If you're hearing this, you're not late, you're right on time. But just barely. This isn't a coincidence. You were meant to hear this before the 14th of July. Because what I'm about to share will either position you for the greatest breakthrough of your life, or leave you watching from the sidelines as others step into what was meant for you. Listen carefully, beloved. Something spiritually critical is unfolding the 14th of July and 15th. Heaven's chessboard just moved, and you're the next piece to shift. But here's what most people don't understand. This isn't about fear. This is about divine alignment. This is about positioning yourself in the eye of God's storm, while others get swept away by confusion. For weeks, I've been receiving the same vision. Chosen ones standing at a crossroads, and only those who recognize this prophetic window will walk through the door that's about to open. The others, they'll spend the next season wondering why everything feels harder, why doors keep closing, why they feel spiritually out of sync. You feel it, don't you? That stirring in your spirit. That sense that something big is about to shift. That's not anxiety, that's anticipation. That's your spirit recognizing what your mind hasn't figured out yet. God is about to separate the committed from the casual, the hungry from the hopeful. And if you're not positioned correctly, you won't just miss an opportunity, you'll miss the opportunity. Before we go deeper, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. If something in your spirit is already stirring, if you feel that familiar flutter of divine recognition, type "I'm here" in the comments right now. This may be the most important message you'll hear all year, because what happens in the next few minutes could determine how you walk through the next few months. Stay with me, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal about the 14th of July and 15th will shake you, but it will also set you free. Have you been waking up at 3 a.m. with no explanation, staring at the ceiling while the world sleeps around you? Do you feel like you're calling out to God but hearing only silence in return? Are you wondering if heaven has somehow forgotten your address? Dear ones, what you're experiencing isn't abandonment, it's preparation. For the past several weeks, I've been hearing the same testimony from believers across this nation. They're describing an eerie calm that settled over their spiritual lives, like standing in the eye of a hurricane where everything feels unnaturally still. Some of you have told me it feels like God has gone radio silent. Others say it's like praying into a void, wondering if your words are even reaching heaven's gates. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. That silence you've been feeling, that's not God moving away from you. That's God moving everything else out of the way. When the prophet Elijah stood on Mount Horeb, expecting God to show up in the earthquake, the wind, and the fire, God whispered to him in the still, small voice. 1 Kings 19:12 says, "And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still, small voice." Sometimes the most powerful moves of God happen in the silence, not in the noise. You see, chosen one, spiritual silence isn't spiritual absence. It's spiritual focus. God isn't ignoring your prayers. He's clearing the frequency so you can hear what's coming next without interference. Think about it. Before every major biblical breakthrough, there was a period of divine quiet. Before the Red Sea parted, Moses heard nothing for days. Before David became king, he spent years in caves hearing only his own heartbeat. Before Jesus emerged from the tomb, there were 3 days of absolute silence that left the disciples wondering if they'd imagined everything. The silence you're experiencing right now is the pause before divine motion. It's the deep breath heaven takes before reshaping your reality. But here's what's keeping me up at night, and it should be keeping you up too. The 14th of July and 15th isn't just another weekend on your calendar. It's a prophetic gate disguised as ordinary dates. And that spiritual silence you've been feeling, it's about to be shattered. The veil between worlds isn't just thin right now, it's lifting. And when it lifts completely on these dates, what's been hidden in the silence is going to be revealed with such force that those who aren't spiritually prepared will be overwhelmed by the intensity. I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't some mystical theory I'm sharing with you. This is a warning wrapped in hope, delivered to you by someone who's spent 5 decades watching God's patterns unfold. When heaven goes quiet like this, it's always, and I mean always, the precursor to a divine interruption so significant that it splits time into before and after. You want to know why you've been waking up at 3 a.m.? That's the hour of divine visitation. It's when heaven downloads are strongest, because your conscious mind isn't interfering with the reception. God has been trying to prepare your spirit for what's coming, but your rational mind keeps explaining it away. Here's the controversy nobody wants to talk about. Not everyone who feels the silence will be ready for what breaks it. Some will be caught spiritually unprepared, still trying to figure out why God seemed distant, while others will recognize that the distance was actually divine positioning. Think about Noah. Do you think he felt close to God while building an ark with no rain in sight? Think about Abraham, knife raised over Isaac, wondering if he'd heard God correctly. Think about Mary, pregnant and unmarried, trying to explain the impossible to a world that wouldn't understand. Divine silence often precedes divine assignment. And the 14th of July and the 15th of March is the end of your preparation period. But here's what's going to separate those who thrive from those who merely survive what's coming. Your response to the silence determines your position for the sound. If you've been complaining about God's distance, you're not positioned for His presence. If you've been questioning His faithfulness during the quiet, you won't recognize His voice when He speaks. The silence has been training you, teaching you to tune into frequencies you've never had to access before, strengthening your spiritual ears, so when heaven's voice returns, you won't be overwhelmed by its power. Ecclesiastes 3-7 reminds us there's a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Your time of silence is ending. But are you ready for what he's about to say? Because what breaks the silence on the 14th of July and 15th won't be a gentle whisper. It's going to be a divine roar that repositions destinies, realigns purposes, and reveals assignments that have been hidden in the quiet. If this message is already confirming what you've been sensing deep in your spirit, if you're feeling that familiar stirring that tells you this isn't coincidence but confirmation, share it right now with someone who needs to hear God whisper again. Because what I'm about to reveal next about these prophetic dates will explain why your season of silence was actually your season of preparation. The question isn't whether God is about to speak. The question is, when He does, will you be positioned to hear Him clearly, or will you still be complaining about the silence you've just emerged from? The divine timestamp. Why the 14th of July 15th matters. You know what breaks my heart? I've watched thousands of believers miss their moment because they thought God's timing was just flexible, like some cosmic suggestion box where prayers get answered whenever it's convenient. But that's not how heaven operates, dear one. That's not how divine seasons work. Let me tell you something that will change how you view these next 48 hours forever. What's happening the 14th of July and 15th isn't just another weekend. It's not even just a spiritual event. This is a divine audit, a celestial checkpoint, and most people are going to walk right through it completely unaware that their destiny just got permanently redirected. You see, the ancients understood something we've forgotten. They knew that certain dates carry supernatural weight. They knew that heaven operates on a schedule so precise, so intentional, that missing the window doesn't just delay your blessing, it can change your entire trajectory. Think about Job. Remember his story. For months, maybe years, he endured testing, questioning, suffering. But then came one day, one specific moment, when God said, "Enough," and everything shifted. Not gradually, instantly. Job 42:10 tells us. And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. One prayer, one moment. Complete reversal. That's what we're looking at right now. A Job 42:10 moment. But here's what terrifies me about this generation of believers. We've become so comfortable with spiritual mediocrity that we don't recognize divine urgency when it's staring us in the face. We think God's timing is negotiable. We think his seasons can be postponed. We think prayers just float around in some cosmic waiting room until we're ready to receive them. That's not biblical. That's not how the kingdom operates. Ecclesiastes 3:1 doesn't say, "To everything there might be a season." It says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Present tense, definitive, non-negotiable. And right now, we're entering one of those seasons. The 14th of July and the 15th of March what I can only describe as a convergence point. Think of it like this. Imagine every prayer you've whispered in desperation, every dream you've held onto when logic said let go, every promise God spoke over your life that hasn't manifested yet. They're all sitting in heaven's processing center. And this weekend, decisions are being made. Some prayers are getting the green light, instant approval, divine acceleration, but others are being marked. Return to sender. Not because God doesn't love you, not because your prayers weren't sincere, but because the person who prayed those prayers no longer exists. You've changed. Your calling has evolved. Your capacity has expanded. And here's the part that should shake you to your core. The universe doesn't say number. It says, not as you are. Do you understand what that means? It means some of the doors you've been knocking on for years are about to open wide, but only if you're spiritually positioned to walk through them. And other doors you've been forcing, manipulating, trying to pry open through your own strength, they're about to seal shut forever. Think about David. 17 years between his anointing and his crowning. 17 years of waiting, hiding, running, wondering if God had forgotten his promise. But when the time came, when Saul fell on Mount Gilboa, there was no delay, no gradual transition. One day David was a fugitive. The next day he was king. The season shifted in an instant. That's what's coming for someone watching this message right now. A David moment, a shift so sudden, so complete, that your before and after will look like two different lives. But here's what you need to understand about these divine timestamps. They don't wait for you to be ready. They don't pause while you get your act together. They don't send reminder notifications. When the moment comes, you either step through the door or you watch it close. I keep thinking about the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. 5 were ready when the bridegroom came. 5 weren't. And when those 5 unprepared virgins finally got their oil together, finally got ready to join the wedding feast, what did they find? The door was shut. Not locked temporarily, shut permanently. And he answered and said, "Assuredly, I say to you, I do not know you." That's not cruelty. That's divine timing. That's the reality of operating in a kingdom that runs on heaven's schedule, not ours. So let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if it hurts. How many times have you felt God moving in your life? Felt that stirring, that urgency, that sense of now is the time, and you hesitated. You waited for a better moment. You wanted more confirmation. You needed to feel more ready. How many doors have you watched close because you thought God's timing was just a suggestion? Because what's happening the 14th of July and 15th is bigger than a spiritual experience. It's a divine sorting, a separation. And after these 48 hours pass, some opportunities will never come around again. Some prayers will never resurface. Some doors will never reopen. But for those who recognize this moment, for those who position themselves correctly, for those who understand that divine timing doesn't bend to human convenience, everything is about to change. You woke up this morning and something felt off. Maybe it was the brain fog that hit you like a wall when you tried to remember what you were supposed to do today. Maybe it was that strange pressure in your chest, like someone's pressing their hand against your heart. Or maybe it was those vivid dreams that felt more real than your waking hours, dreams where you were receiving messages you can't quite recall but can't shake either. You thought you were losing your mind, didn't you? You Googled your symptoms. You wondered if you needed to see a doctor. You questioned whether the stress of life was finally catching up with you. But what if I told you that what you're experiencing isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough? What if those symptoms aren't signs of something wrong, but signs of something incredibly right? Listen to me carefully. Chosen one. You're not broken. You're just updating. Think about your smartphone. When it downloads a major update, what happens? The screen flickers, apps crash, everything runs slower. Sometimes the phone gets hot. Sometimes it needs to restart completely. But when the update finishes, everything works better than before. New features appear, old problems disappear. The whole system operates at a higher level. That's exactly what's happening to your spiritual operating system right now. The Apostle Paul knew this feeling. In 2 Corinthians 12:2, he describes being caught up to the third heaven. But notice, he doesn't say it was comfortable. He says he didn't even know if he was in the body or out of the body. That's what a divine download feels like. Disorienting, overwhelming, real. You're not paranoid, you're perceptive. You're picking up on frequencies that most people can't even sense. While they're scrolling through their phones, numb to the spiritual atmosphere, you're feeling the shift in the heavenlies. While they're sleeping soundly, you're lying awake because your spirit is being recalibrated for what's coming. That insomnia you've been experiencing, that's not anxiety, that's anticipation. Your spirit knows something your mind hasn't figured out yet. God is doing surgery on your soul, and anesthesia isn't part of the process. You're not overwhelmed, you're being overflowed. There's a difference. When you're overwhelmed, you're drowning. When you're being overflowed, you're being filled beyond your current capacity because God is expanding that capacity. Remember when Jesus told his disciples to cast their nets on the other side of the boat? When they obeyed, they caught so many fish that their nets began to break and their boats began to sink. That wasn't a disaster, that was a demonstration of divine overflow. Sometimes God's blessings are so abundant, they stretch us beyond our comfort zone. But here's what you need to understand about spiritual downloads. They don't come in peace. They come in friction. They come in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep. They come when you're driving to work and suddenly you have to pull over because you're crying and you don't know why. They come when you're in the grocery store and you suddenly feel like you're carrying the weight of the world. That chest pressure you've been feeling, that's not a heart attack. That's your heart expanding to hold more of God's presence. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his face was so bright with God's glory that the Israelites couldn't look at him. Your nervous system is learning to carry glory it's never carried before. Those brain zaps, that mental fog, that feeling like your thoughts are moving through molasses, that's not early dementia. That's divine interference. God is scrambling your old thought patterns because they can't process where he's taking you. Your mind is being reformatted for new revelations. You know what your problem is? You've been trying to download heaven on dial-up internet. God is upgrading you to fiber optic, but the installation process is intense. Here's the truth that's going to set you free. God is sending you a divine text message, but if your spiritual phone is off, if you're too distracted by Netflix and social media and the noise of this world, you'll miss it. And this isn't a message he's going to repeat. This is a one-time transmission for this prophetic window. The prophet Daniel experienced something similar. In Daniel 10:8, after receiving a vision, he says, "I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left. my face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. That's what happens when heaven downloads into humanity. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. You've been chosen to receive this calibration because you have an assignment that requires this level of spiritual sensitivity. God doesn't upgrade everyone's operating system, only those He's preparing for greater works. But here's the urgency you need to understand. This calibration window is closing. After the 15th of July, the download stops. The symptoms ease, but so does the opportunity. You'll either emerge from this recalibrated and ready, or you'll miss the upgrade entirely and wonder why everyone else seems to be moving forward while you feel stuck. Drop "I receive it" in the comments if you know this calibration is happening in you, because acknowledging it accelerates it. Resisting it prolongs the discomfort. But here's what happens next that will determine everything. You think you've been wrestling with circumstances, but you've actually been wrestling with yourself, and God knows it. He's been watching you dance around your calling, watching you settle for comfortable instead of chosen, watching you play small when He made you for something massive. But here's what's about to happen during these 48 hours that will change everything. At some point during this prophetic vortex, when the noise of the world finally quiets down, when your phone stops buzzing and your mind stops racing, a question will come. Not from your head, but from your soul. Not from your logic, but from the deepest part of who you really are. You'll be sitting there, maybe drinking your morning coffee, maybe lying in bed at 2 a.m. unable to sleep, maybe walking through your house feeling that strange restlessness that's been building for weeks. And suddenly, like a whisper that cuts through everything else, you'll hear it. Are you still pretending? The question will hit you like lightning, because deep down, you know exactly what it means. You know about the mask you've been wearing, the version of yourself you present to the world that's safe, acceptable, predictable, the version that doesn't rock the boat or make waves or step into the uncomfortable territory of true purpose. But that's not all. The voice will continue. Do you want out? Out of the cycle of settling, out of the pattern of playing it safe, out of the endless loop of almost but not quite, out of watching others walk in their calling while you sit in the audience of your own life, applauding everyone else's breakthrough while secretly wondering when yours will come. And then comes the question that will shake you to your core. Will you become who I made you to be? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. That's Jeremiah 1-5. And it wasn't just written for Jeremiah. It was written for every person who's ever felt that stirring, that knowing, that divine discomfort that says you're meant for more than what you're currently living. God knew you before your first breath. He saw your struggles before they happened. He watched your victories before you won them. And He's been waiting, with infinite patience, for this moment when you would finally be ready to hear the question that changes everything. But here's what most people don't understand about divine timing. This moment, this question, this opportunity to step into your true identity, it only comes once. Not once a year, not once a decade, once in a lifetime. And if you miss it, if you brush it off as imagination or dismiss it as wishful thinking, the window seals. Not out of punishment, but out of respect for your choice. You see, God doesn't force destiny on anyone. He offers it, He presents it, He makes it available. But He won't chase you down and drag you into your purpose kicking and screaming. At some point, He steps back and honors whatever decision you make, even if that decision is to stay small. That voice you'll hear during these 48 hours, that voice isn't yours. It's too clear, too direct, too knowing to be your own inner dialogue. It's the sound of heaven breaking through the static of earth to ask you the most important question of your life. And it won't speak twice. Think about it. How many times have you felt that nudge to do something brave, something different, something that scared you but excited you at the same time? How many times have you talked yourself out of it, convinced yourself you weren't ready, persuaded yourself to wait for a better time? This is your better time. This is your ready moment. This is the divine interruption you've been unconsciously praying for, even when you didn't know how to put it into words. But here's the part that should absolutely terrify you. What if this is it? What if these 48 hours represent the last time God extends this invitation? What if the 14th of July and the 15th of March the end of the preparation season and the beginning of the separation season, where those who said yes move forward and those who said not yet get left behind in their comfort zones? You've been complaining about feeling stuck, about doors being closed, about opportunities passing you by. But what if the real problem isn't that God isn't moving? What if the real problem is that you keep saying no to his movement? The question is coming, chosen one. You'll recognize it the moment you hear it, because your spirit will leap, your heart will race. Your palms might even sweat, because you'll know without a doubt that this is the moment everything pivots. And when that question comes, when that voice speaks your name and asks if you're ready to stop pretending and start becoming, you'll have seconds to respond. Not days to think it over. Not weeks to pray about it. Seconds. Because divine timing doesn't wait for human hesitation. Write down the date you're watching this. Write down the exact time. That timestamp will become your covenant of yes. Your agreement with heaven that you're finally ready to stop rehearsing your life and start living it. Because what happens next will determine whether you spend the rest of this year stepping into unprecedented favor or watching others walk through doors that were meant for you. Most will scroll past this like it's just another video. They'll say nice word and miss the portal entirely. Right now, as I speak these words, millions of people are going about their Sunday routines, completely unaware that the spiritual atmosphere around them is shifting like tectonic plates beneath their feet. You want to know why most chosen ones never step into their calling? It's not because they lack faith. It's not because they don't pray enough. It's because they've been trained to wait for permission from a world that will never give it to them. Listen to me carefully. The enemy's greatest weapon isn't temptation, it's distraction. While you're scrolling through social media, while you're arguing about politics, while you're consumed with the noise of this world, heaven is moving chess pieces on a board you can't even see. And most people? They're so busy looking down at their phones, they miss the angels positioning themselves around their lives. Here's what's happening right now that most people can't perceive. Spiritual surveillance is at an all-time high. Your guides, your ancestors, even the angels assigned to your destiny they're watching. Not to judge you, but to see if you're awake enough to receive what's been prepared for you. Do you think it's a coincidence that you're watching this video right now? Do you think it's random that something stirred in your spirit when you saw the title? Synchronicities aren't coincidences, they're confirmation that you're being tracked by heaven itself. But here's where most people get it wrong. They're waiting for a burning bush. They're waiting for an audible voice. They're waiting for someone else to validate what their spirit already knows. Jesus said in Matthew 16:3, "You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times." The chosen don't need signs. They become the signs. You see, while everyone else is asking God for clarity, the chosen ones are becoming clarity for others. While everyone else is praying for doors to open, the chosen ones realize they are the door that others have been praying for. This is the paradigm shift that separates the called from the chosen. Right now, there are people in your life who are spiritually starving, and they don't even know it. They're waiting for someone like you to step into your authority, to stop playing small, to stop hiding behind false humility. Your breakthrough isn't just about you. It's about everyone whose life will change when you finally say yes to who you really are. But here's the brutal truth most pastors won't tell you. God is not going to keep calling forever. Revelation 3:20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." But notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say he'll stand there indefinitely. There comes a moment when the knocking stops, not because God stopped loving you, but because he's moved on to someone who's ready to answer. The 14th of July and 15th represent one of those moments, a divine intersection where heaven's timing meets earth's readiness. And most people will miss it because they're not spiritually positioned to recognize it. You know what breaks my heart? Walking through churches filled with people who have been Christians for decades, yet they're still living like spiritual refugees in their own promised land. They're still begging for what Jesus already died to give them. They're still asking for breakthrough when they should be walking in authority. The difference between those who break through and those who break down isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't even faith. It's timing. It's being awake when heaven moves. It's being positioned when the portal opens. Here's what's about to happen on the 14th of July and 15th. Heaven is not asking for perfect people, only present people. God isn't looking for those who have it all figured out. He's looking for those who are awake enough to say yes when their moment arrives. Do you remember the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25? 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. They all had lamps. They all knew the bridegroom was coming, but only 5 were ready when he arrived. The difference wasn't their knowledge, it was their preparation. The wise virgins didn't just have oil in their lamps. They had extra oil. They understood that preparation isn't a one-time event, it's a lifestyle. They knew that when the moment came, there wouldn't be time to go buy more oil. There wouldn't be time to get ready. You're either ready or you're not. Right now, as you're listening to these words, something is being decided in the spiritual realm about your next season. The question isn't whether God wants to use you. The question is whether you're prepared to be used. Most people pray for opportunities, but they're not prepared for the weight of answered prayer. They ask for promotion, but they haven't developed the character to handle elevation. They want the breakthrough, but they're not ready for the responsibility that comes with it. If you're still watching this, if you haven't clicked away, if something in your spirit is burning right now, that's not emotion, that's recognition. Your spirit knows something your mind is still trying to figure out. The portal is opening. The invitation has been extended. The question is, are you going to step through, or are you going to spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been? If you're still here, declare this with me. I will not sleep through my moment of awakening. Because what I'm about to show you next will reveal exactly what you need to do before the 15th of July arrives and time runs out. Listen to me carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you will determine how you experience the rest of this year. When that clock strikes midnight on the 15th of July, something profound and irreversible happens. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's absolute. The spiritual door that's been creaking open for these 48 hours, it doesn't slam shut. It seals, like the final stone being rolled into place over a tomb, or the last drop of oil filling the lamp before the bridegroom arrives. There's no forcing it open after that moment. There's no second chance. There's no "I'll catch the next one." And here's what breaks my heart. Most people won't even realize what just happened to them. You see, after the 15th of July, there will be 2 distinct groups of people walking this earth. 2 different frequencies. 2 separate realities existing side by side, but worlds apart in their spiritual experience. The first group will feel something they haven't felt in years. They'll wake up on the 16th of July and notice the air feels different, cleaner, like breathing after holding your breath underwater. Their minds will be sharper, their hearts lighter, their path clearer. These are the ones who entered the portal in silence and surrender, who recognize that sometimes God's greatest gifts come wrapped in the strangest packages. They'll start receiving downloads, sudden insights, unexpected phone calls, doors opening that have been locked for months. Their dreams will become vivid blueprints. Their intuition will speak louder than their fear. They'll feel like they're walking in divine synchronicity, where every step is orchestrated by heaven itself. But then there's the second group. And dear friend, this is where my spirit grieves. These precious souls will wake up feeling off, not sick, not broken, just fogged, like they're trying to see through dirty glass. Their plans will start stalling for no logical reason. Conversations will feel forced. Opportunities will slip through their fingers like sand. They'll feel like everyone else is moving forward while they're stuck in spiritual quicksand. This isn't punishment. Let me be crystal clear about that. This is alignment. This is the universe reorganizing itself around those who chose to step through the door and those who chose to stand on the sidelines. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew 25 about the 10 virgins. 5 were ready when the bridegroom came, 5 were not. And to those who missed their moment, he said, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you." Not because he stopped loving them, but because they missed their appointed time. The oil was available to everyone. The invitation was extended to all, but only 5 chose to prepare. Only 5 chose to stay awake. Only 5 chose to believe that the bridegroom was actually coming. Right now, today, this very moment, you are one of those 10 virgins. The question isn't whether you're invited, you are. The question isn't whether you're worthy, you are. The question is whether you'll trim your lamp and fill it with oil, or whether you'll assume there's always tomorrow. But here's what tears at my soul: there might not be a tomorrow. Not like this. Not with this kind of spiritual opportunity hanging in the air like morning mist, ready to lift and disappear forever. I've seen this before. I've watched people miss their Kairos moment, that divine intersection where heaven's timing meets earth's readiness, and spend years wondering why life suddenly felt harder, why prayers seemed to hit the ceiling, why breakthrough felt just out of reach. They didn't become less loved by God. They didn't lose their salvation, but they missed their acceleration. They missed their elevation. They chose the familiar over the transformational, and the cost was measured not in damnation, but in delay. You don't have to be one of them. Right now, this very second, you can choose to enter this portal with intention. You can choose to spend the 14th of July and 15th in sacred silence instead of chaotic noise. You can choose to fast from distraction and feast on God's presence. You can choose to let this weekend become your wilderness, where you meet God face to face and come out transformed. But you have to choose. And you have to choose now. Because if you enter this portal in silence and surrender, what comes next won't feel like breakthrough. It'll feel like rebirth, like being born again, like stepping out of a black and white movie into full color. The clouds that have been hanging over your finances, your relationships, your health, your calling, they won't just part, they'll evaporate. The confusion that's been clouding your judgment will lift like fog before the morning sun. The weariness that's been weighing down your spirit will be replaced by a strength that doesn't come from this world. This wasn't just a message, chosen one. This was a spiritual ignition switch, and now it's lit. The countdown has begun, not to destruction, but to distribution, not to judgment, but to separation, not to ending, but to beginning. The only question left is, which group will you be in come the 16th of July? If your spirit was stirred by this word, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for what's coming next, because what I'm about to reveal about the weeks following the 15th of July will blow your mind. Share this with exactly 3 people who need to wake up before the gate closes, and drop a fire emoji in the comments if you've decided, not just hoped, but decided to walk through the door. Your future self is waiting on the other side. Since the 15th, things have felt strange, haven't they? I've been getting hundreds of messages from chosen ones around the world, and they're all saying the same thing. Something shifted, something ended, but they can't quite put their finger on what. Did you feel a sudden weight lift, only for confusion to replace it? Like you were carrying invisible chains for months, and suddenly they were gone, but now you're walking differently, and you don't know why. Did something feel like it ended, but you're not sure what? Like a chapter closed in your spiritual book, but someone tore out the page before you could read the last line. Listen to me carefully, beloved. What you experienced wasn't coincidence. It wasn't your imagination. It wasn't stress or lack of sleep or too much coffee. What you felt was the sound of a cosmic door sealing shut, forever. Remember what I told you before the 14th of July. about the spiritual portal, about the divine sorting that was about to take place. Well, it happened. And right now, as I'm speaking to you, the echoes of that moment are still reverberating through the spiritual realm. Heaven whispered, but did you hear it? Because here's what most people don't understand about prophetic moments. They don't come with trumpets and lightning. They come like breath on glass, soft, almost invisible, easily missed. But once they pass, they leave a mark that changes everything. In Revelation 3:20, Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in." But here's what that verse doesn't tell you. Sometimes, when no one answers, the knocking stops, the footsteps fade, and the opportunity moves on to the next house. That's what happened on the 15th of July. The knocking stopped for some, and the silence that followed, that wasn't peace. That was the echo of a missed moment. Now, before you panic, before you start spiraling into regret, listen to what I'm about to tell you. Because if you did hear the whisper, if you did feel that shift, if something inside you responded to that divine moment, you may have already been marked. And I don't mean marked for judgment, I mean marked for acceleration. But if you didn't, if you were too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the noise of daily life to notice heaven bending down to touch your timeline, don't panic, but listen closely, because what I'm about to share could be your second chance. You see, God doesn't just knock once. He's too loving for that, too persistent, too invested in your destiny, but he also doesn't knock forever. There are windows, there are seasons, there are moments when the spiritual atmosphere is so charged, so pregnant with possibility, that missing it doesn't just delay your breakthrough, it reshapes your entire path. If you've felt off since the 15th of July, if you've been walking through life feeling like something is missing but you can't name it, if you've been experiencing what I call spiritual vertigo, where everything looks the same but feels completely different, type ME2 in the comments right now. You're not imagining it. Something shifted, and you felt it. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the plot thickens in ways that will make your head spin and your heart race. Because what happened on the 15th of July wasn't the end of the story. It was the prologue to something bigger, something that's been building in the spiritual realm for months, maybe years. Think about Daniel in the lion's den. When that stone was rolled across the opening, sealing him inside with death itself, it looked like the end. It felt like abandonment. It seemed like God had forgotten his promise. But that sealed tomb wasn't Daniel's grave. It was his graduation chamber. It was the place where his faith would be tested, proven, and ultimately vindicated before kings and kingdoms. What if the sealing you felt on the 15th of July wasn't God closing a door on you? What if it was God sealing you inside a divine pressure chamber, preparing you for something so big, so unprecedented, that you needed to be spiritually fortified before you could handle it? But here's the catch. Here's the part that will determine whether you emerge from this chamber as a testimony or a statistic, whether you come out stronger or stay stuck, whether you break through or break down. It all depends on how you respond to what I'm about to tell you next. Because what happened on the 15th of July was just the beginning. The real test, the real opportunity, the real moment of truth that's coming. And most people have no idea it's headed straight for them like a spiritual freight train carrying either their destiny or their downfall. Are you ready to discover what's been building in the shadows while you've been feeling this strange emptiness? Are you prepared to learn why that silence you've been experiencing isn't God's absence, but his preparation for the loudest move he's ever made in your life? Because what's coming next will either explain everything you've been feeling or shake you so deeply that you'll never see your spiritual journey the same way again. You know what's happening to you right now, don't you? You've been feeling it for weeks, maybe months. Something's different, something's shifted, and you can't quite put your finger on it, but you know deep in your bones that you're not the same person you were 6 months ago. let me tell you what's really going on. What you're experiencing isn't random, it's not a breakdown, it's not even a spiritual attack, though the enemy wants you to think it is. What you're feeling are the divine symptoms of a chosen one who's about to birth their destiny. The first symptom, holy disorientation. You wake up every morning feeling like a stranger in your own life. The routines that once brought you comfort now feel empty. The prayers that once felt powerful now seem to echo in a void. The friends who used to energize you now drain you. Even your favorite television shows feel foreign. It's like someone switched the channel on your entire existence overnight. You're not losing your mind, beloved. You're losing your old mind. The one that was programmed for survival instead of significance. The one that settled for less instead of seeking more. Isaiah 43:19 says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" God is literally rewiring your spiritual GPS, and the old coordinates don't work anymore. But here's what's terrifying you. You don't know where you're going. You just know you can't stay where you are. That restlessness isn't rebellion. That dissatisfaction isn't ingratitude. That's divine dissatisfaction. That's God making you too big for your current container. The second symptom, sacred exhaustion. You feel like you've been running a marathon in your sleep. You wake up tired. You go to bed tired. You could sleep for 12 hours and still feel like you need 12 more. Your body aches in places that have no medical explanation. Your mind feels foggy, like you're thinking through molasses. People keep asking you what's wrong, and you want to scream, "I don't know," because physically, nothing's wrong. Spiritually, everything's changing. This isn't depression, dear one. This is compression. You know how a diamond is formed? Extreme pressure over time. That's what's happening to your spirit right now. The Apostle Paul understood this. In 2 Corinthians 4:17, he wrote, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." That exhaustion you feel, it's not from what you're doing. It's from what God is doing in you. You're carrying the weight of your future while still dragging the chains of your past. Your spirit is pregnant with purpose, and pregnancy is exhausting. Every cell in your spiritual body is working overtime to create something that has never existed before, the fully actualized you. The third symptom, unexplainable longing. This one breaks my heart because I know exactly what you're going through. You cry at random moments. A song comes on the radio and tears start flowing. You see a sunset and something inside you aches. You watch other people living their lives and you feel this deep, unnamed hunger. You can't explain it to anyone because how do you describe homesickness for a place you've never been? How do you explain mourning for a life you've never lived? That longing isn't sadness, chosen one. That's anticipation. That's your spirit, recognizing its true home before your mind can comprehend it. Ecclesiastes 3:11 tells us God has set eternity in the human heart. What you're feeling is eternity calling you home to your purpose. It's destiny knocking on the door of your consciousness. It's the future version of yourself trying to get your attention. You cry because your spirit knows something your mind doesn't. You're closer than you've ever been to stepping into the life God always intended for you. What you're feeling is not emotional collapse, it's spiritual compression. Think about this. You've been spiritually pregnant with purpose for months, maybe years. And the 14th of July? The 14th of July broke your water. The labor pains you're feeling aren't punishment. They're positioning. Every contraction, every moment of discomfort, every sleepless night has been preparing you for the birth of your divine assignment. You're not broken. You're in labor. And just like natural childbirth, the pain gets more intense right before the breakthrough, right before the miracle, right before everything changes forever. Heaven is not punishing you. It's positioning you. You didn't miss the move, you're inside it. You're not watching from the sidelines. You're on the field. You're not behind schedule. You're right on time for the greatest spiritual delivery of your life. But here's what most people don't understand about spiritual labor. If you fight it, it gets harder. If you resist it, it gets longer. If you run from it, you miss it entirely. The question isn't whether you're going through this divine transition. The question is, are you going to work with it or against it? Because what I'm about to show you next will determine whether you birth this new season with joy or struggle through it in unnecessary pain. You felt it, didn't you? That shift after the 14th of July and 15th. Something changed in the atmosphere. Something moved in the spiritual realm. And now you're realizing that those 2 days weren't just dates on a calendar, they were a divine checkpoint. A supernatural sorting process that separated those who are walking forward into God's new thing from those who are now walking in circles without even knowing it. Listen to me carefully. Chosen one, what happened over that weekend wasn't just about sealing the past. It opened timelines, multiple realities, and right now, at this very moment, you're either aligned with heaven's frequency or you're feeling pulled backward by forces you can't even see. Let me ask you something that might shock you. Have you tried reaching out to someone recently and got completely ghosted? Maybe someone you thought you had a connection with just vanished. You might think that was rejection, but what if I told you that was divine protection? What if God was literally blocking that connection because it would have derailed your destiny? Or maybe you woke up crying one morning and had no idea why. Tears streaming down your face for no logical reason. You brushed it off, thought you were just emotional. But what if those tears weren't random? What if that was your spirit releasing decades of pain, disappointment, and delay that you didn't even know you were carrying? See, this is how God sorts his people. Not through thunderclaps and burning bushes, but through the subtle rearrangement of everyday moments. He removes what would harm you and releases what would heal you, often without you even understanding what's happening. Right now, there are people watching this who are experiencing supernatural momentum. Doors opening that were sealed shut for years. Phone calls coming in at perfect timing. Ideas downloading in the middle of the night. That's not luck, beloved. That's frequency alignment. That's your spirit finally syncing with heaven's broadcast. But there's another group watching this. You know who you are. Everything feels stuck. Plans falling through at the last minute. Miscommunications everywhere you turn. Feeling like you're speaking a different language than everyone around you. Technology glitching when you need it most. That's not bad luck either. That's the consequence of missing the frequency window. The prophet Isaiah spoke directly to this moment when he declared, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Do you perceive it?" That's the question God is asking you right now. Are you perceiving the new thing he's doing? Or are you still dwelling on the former things? Because here's what most people don't understand: you can't perceive the new while you're clinging to the old. This divine sorting isn't cruel, it's necessary. God had to separate those who are ready for acceleration from those who would sabotage the process. He had to create distance between the hungry and the comfortable, between the ones who truly trust his timing and the ones who just say they do. Some of you right now are feeling a strange peace you can't explain. Even though circumstances haven't completely shifted yet, something deep inside you knows that everything is aligning. You're not anxious about the future anymore. You're not scrambling to make things happen. You've entered what I call divine rest, the space where you know God has it handled, and you're just waiting for the manifestation. But others of you are feeling increasingly frustrated, like you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. The harder you work, the more resistance you face. That's because you're trying to force your way into a season that's not yours anymore. You're operating on old coordinates while God has already moved the destination. Here's the shocking truth. Nobody wants to hear. Some people have been disqualified, not because they're bad people, but because they refuse to evolve. They kept using yesterday's methods for tomorrow's miracles. They stayed comfortable when God was calling them to stretch. They chose familiar dysfunction over unfamiliar breakthrough. The sorting has already happened. The question isn't whether you'll be chosen, it's whether you'll recognize that you already have been. Whether you'll step into the timeline God opened for you, or keep circling around the one that closed behind you. Every rejection you've experienced since the 15th of July has been redirection. Every delay has been divine protection. Every door that slammed shut was actually a wall being built to keep you on the right path. But you have to trust the process, even when it doesn't feel like progress. Your spirit knows something your mind is still trying to figure out. That restlessness you feel, that's not confusion, that's anticipation. Your soul is picking up frequencies from your future, and it's trying to pull the rest of you forward. But here's what will determine everything moving forward: your response to this message right now. Are you going to keep analyzing what happened, or are you going to start aligning with what's happening? Are you going to keep mourning what you lost, or start celebrating what you found? The new thing God is doing isn't just coming, it's already here. The question is whether you're positioned to receive it, or still standing in the spot where the old thing used to be. Type "new thing" in the comments if this word is confirming what your spirit already knows. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how to tell if you made it through the sorting, or if you're about to face the consequences of missing heaven's most critical window. You did everything right. You heard the call. You aligned yourself. You stepped through that prophetic doorway on the 14th of July and 15th. You felt the shift in your spirit, the confirmation in your soul. You were obedient to heaven's timing. But now, silence. The signs have stopped. The confirmations have dried up. The divine downloads that once flooded your spirit, gone. And you're standing there wondering if you imagined it all. Wondering if you missed something. Wondering if God has moved on without you. Dear chosen one, let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. That silence isn't abandonment. It's graduation. You see, the first test was alignment. Could you hear heaven's voice when it was calling? Could you position yourself in divine timing? Could you step through the door when it opened? You passed that test. But now comes the second test, and this one is harder. This one separates the mature from the immature, the committed from the curious. The second test is how you walk when the signs stop. Think about it. Moses led 2 million people through the Red Sea with God's miraculous power on full display, walls of water on both sides, divine intervention so obvious that even the skeptics had to believe. But what happened next? They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. 40 years of silence, 40 years of manna and mundane. 40 years of wondering where the spectacular God went. You crossed your Red Sea on the 14th of July and 15th. But now you're in the wilderness and the GPS signal is gone. Here's what's happening in your life right now. You made the leap of faith and you landed in fog. You stepped out of your comfort zone, and instead of immediate breakthrough you got confusion. Bills that are still unpaid, relationships that are still complicated, dreams that feel further away than ever. And Satan is whispering in your ear, "See, you were wrong. God isn't moving in your life. You're still stuck. Nothing's changed." But let me tell you what's really happening. God is watching. He's not absent. He's observing. He wants to see what you'll do when the fireworks stop. Will you keep walking the narrow path when there's no crowd cheering? Will you maintain your spiritual discipline when you don't feel His presence? Will you continue to believe His promises when your circumstances look exactly the same? This is where most people fail. They mistake silence for abandonment. They interpret the absence of supernatural confirmation as God's rejection. They go back to their old ways, their old habits, their old compromises, thinking they somehow missed God's plan. But you're not most people. You're chosen. Listen to what Jesus said in John 20:29. "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." The greatest blessing isn't reserved for those who need constant signs and wonders. It's reserved for those who can walk by faith when the path is dark. Abraham waited 25 years for Isaac. 25 years of silence between the promise and the fulfillment. David was anointed king as a teenager, but didn't sit on the throne until he was 30. Joseph had dreams of greatness at 17, but didn't see them fulfilled until he was 39. The silence isn't punishment, it's preparation. God is developing something in you that can only be forged in the furnace of uncertainty. Character that can't be built when everything's easy. Faith that can't be developed when every prayer gets answered immediately. Endurance that can't be strengthened when the road is smooth. Right now, in this very moment, you're being tested on a level most Christians never reach. Most people never make it to the wilderness test because they never stepped through the Red Sea in the first place. They're still sitting on the shore of Egypt, complaining about their bondage, but too afraid to trust God for deliverance. But you stepped through. You're in the wilderness now, and that's actually a promotion, not a demotion. Here's what I need you to understand. Your breakthrough didn't fail, it's building. Every day of silence is laying another brick in the foundation of your destiny. Every moment of uncertainty is strengthening muscles in your faith you didn't even know you had. The enemy wants you to think you made a mistake. He wants you to believe that God's silence means God's absence. He wants you to retreat back to familiar territory where at least you knew what to expect. But you can't go back to Egypt once you've tasted the Red Sea miracle. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. So what do you do in the silence? You keep walking. You maintain your spiritual disciplines even when you don't feel like it. You continue to tithe even when your finances look scary. You keep praying even when heaven feels like brass. You keep believing even when your circumstances mock your faith. Because here's the prophetic word I have for you today. Your silence season has an expiration date. And when God breaks his silence, when he speaks again, it won't be a whisper. It will be a roar that shakes the foundations of your life and catapults you into a dimension of blessing you never thought possible. But the question remains, will you still be walking when he speaks again? Or will you have given up somewhere in the wilderness? Because what you do in the silence determines what you receive in the sound. You know what happens the moment God puts his finger on your life, the moment heaven marks you as chosen. That's when the enemy sends his finest counterfeits. Not the obvious attacks you can see coming from a mile away. No, beloved, these are the sophisticated deceptions. The ones that look like answered prayers but smell like sulfur underneath. When God marks you, counterfeits will come to distract you. Right now, as we approach the 14th of July and 15th, the spiritual counterfeit factory is working overtime. Why? Because the enemy knows something you might not realize yet. He knows that what's about to be released over your life is so powerful, so game-changing, that if he doesn't divert you now, you'll be unstoppable after this weekend. Listen to what Jesus warned us in Matthew 24:24. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Did you catch that? Even the elect, even the chosen ones. That's you, dear one. You're not immune to deception just because you're anointed. In fact, you're a bigger target because of it. Here's what's going to happen over the next 48 hours. Opportunities are going to come knocking that look almost too good to be true. Phone calls from people who've been silent for months. Business proposals that promise quick success. Relationships that suddenly want to reconcile. Invitations to events that seem divinely timed. But here's the question that will save your destiny. Does this opportunity require you to compromise your standards? Does it ask you to move faster than your spirit is comfortable with? Does it promise shortcuts that bypass the character building God has been doing in you? Watch for distractions wrapped as opportunities. I've seen too many chosen ones fall for this trap. They're so hungry for breakthrough that they grab the first thing that looks like provision. But counterfeit provision always costs more than it gives. It's like spiritual fool's gold, shiny on the surface, but worthless in God's economy. Remember when Satan took Jesus to the mountaintop and showed him all the kingdoms of the world? All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. The offer was real. The kingdoms were real. But the source was corrupt. That's how counterfeits work, beloved. Real benefits, corrupt source. People, ideas, doors that look like your prayer but don't smell like your spirit. Your spirit has a sense of smell, did you know that? It can detect the fragrance of Christ or the stench of deception. But only if you're paying attention. Only if you're not so desperate for movement that you ignore the warning signals in your gut. I want you to think about something right now. What have you been praying for? What door have you been asking God to open? What relationship have you been asking Him to restore? Now I need you to be brutally honest with yourself. Are you so tired of waiting that you'd settle for a counterfeit version just to end the discomfort of hoping? Because here's what the enemy knows about you that you might not admit to yourself. Your patience is wearing thin. Your faith is being tested. And when people get desperate, they make decisions their anointing would never approve of. The prophet Samuel warned us in 1 Samuel 15:23 that rebellion is like the sin of divination and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. When we get impatient with God's timing, when we start taking matters into our own hands, we open ourselves up to spiritual deception. We start consulting our feelings instead of His word. We start following signs and wonders instead of following Jesus. But here's where this gets even more dangerous. The counterfeits coming between the 14th of July and 15th aren't just random distractions. They're specifically designed to look like the fulfillment of your deepest prayers. That's what makes them so deadly. Not every return is reconciliation. Some are tests in disguise. That ex who suddenly wants to talk. That business partner who disappeared when you needed them most. That family member who's been giving you the cold shoulder for months. Not every door that opens is God. Not every person who returns is restoration. Some are simply tests to see if you've learned the lessons from their first departure. Here's what 1 John 4:1 tells us. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. How do you test a spirit? How do you know if what's showing up is from heaven or from hell? First question. Does this align with God's character? God doesn't ask you to lie, cheat, manipulate, or compromise your integrity for His blessings. If the opportunity requires you to do something that goes against Scripture, it's not from God. Second question. Does this build your character or bypass it? God is more interested in who you become than what you achieve. If this opportunity lets you skip the character development He's been working on, it's probably a shortcut to nowhere. Third question. Does this require you to abandon people God has placed in your life? The enemy loves to isolate chosen ones. If this new opportunity demands that you cut ties with your spiritual covering, your accountability partners, your prayer warriors, it's probably a trap. You see, beloved, the enemy doesn't just want to destroy your destiny. He wants to use your own desires against you. He wants to take the very thing you've been praying for and turn it into the weapon that derails your calling. But here's the good news. If you can recognize the counterfeits, if you can resist the distractions, if you can wait for God's authentic provision instead of settling for the enemy's imitation, then what's coming after the 15th of July will blow your mind. The real breakthrough is worth waiting for. The authentic relationships God has prepared for you are worth the loneliness you feel right now. The genuine opportunities He's aligning for your future are worth saying no to the shiny substitutes showing up this weekend. So I'm asking you to make a decision right now. Are you going to operate in discernment or desperation? Are you going to trust God's timing or grab whatever looks good in the moment? Comment, no counterfeits, if you're ready to walk in discernment, not desperation. But understand this, if you choose discernment, if you choose to wait for God's best instead of accepting the enemy's good enough, you're about to step into a level of spiritual warfare that will test every ounce of faith you have. Because when you reject the counterfeits, when you refuse to be distracted, the real attack begins. Beloved chosen ones, as we close this sacred time together, I want you to hold on to these truths with everything in you. The 14th of July and 15th are not dates to fear, they are dates to prepare for. Remember that when God marks you for promotion, the counterfeits will come. When heaven positions you for breakthrough, hell will send distractions wrapped as opportunities. But you now have the discernment to recognize what's authentic and what's imitation. You are not walking this path alone. Even when it feels like you're the only one who sees what's happening in the spiritual realm, even when others think you're being too cautious or too spiritual, remember that God is orchestrating every detail of your life. He sees the bigger picture. He knows the timing. And He's never late. I want you to know that there's a community here, thousands of chosen ones just like you, who understand the weight of carrying a calling that others don't comprehend. We're praying for each other. We're standing together. When you comment below, when you share your heart, you're connecting with people who get it. You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're chosen. But I need to ask you something that only you can answer. When this weekend passes, when the spiritual dust settles, what kind of person do you want to emerge as? Will you be someone who trusted God's timing even when it was uncomfortable? Or will you be someone who settled for counterfeits because waiting felt too hard? Let me pray over you right now, and I want you to receive this as if I'm standing right there with you, my hand on your shoulder, speaking these words directly into your spirit. Father God, I lift up every person watching this right now. You know their names, you know their struggles, you know the battles they've been fighting in secret. Lord, I pray that between now and the 15th of July, you would surround them with your protection. Give them supernatural discernment to recognize what's from you and what's from the enemy. God, for those who are tired of waiting, I pray you would renew their strength. For those who are tempted to settle for less than your best, I pray you would give them the courage to say no to counterfeits. For those who feel isolated in their calling, I pray you would connect them with people who understand their heart. Lord, I declare over every chosen one watching this that they will not miss their moment. They will not be deceived. They will not be distracted. I pray that on the 16th of July, they will wake up knowing they made the right choices, that they positioned themselves correctly, and that they're ready for whatever you have next. Cover them with your peace that passes understanding. Strengthen them with your joy that is their strength, and remind them every single day that they are loved, they are chosen, and they are never, ever alone. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what spoke to your heart today. What are you going to do differently between now and the 15th of July? Are there others in your life who need to hear this message? Share this video with them. Don't let them walk into this prophetic window unprepared. And if this message blessed you, if it gave you the clarity you needed, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. There are more chosen ones who need to find this community, who need to know they're not alone in what they're experiencing. Your subscription helps us reach them. Remember, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are called according to His purpose. And your best days are not behind you, they're ahead of you. Until we meet again, stay strong, stay discerning, and keep your eyes on Jesus. God bless you, chosen one.